Hi everyone, this is Rick and I'm going to walk you through purchase orders and inventory transfers today. So first note that we're going to be looking at the simplistic version of purchase orders. There is also something called purchase order planning, which is significantly more sophisticated. It gives you tools that allow you to do some in-depth analysis on the movement of products or purchase history with vendors, etc., so that you can kind of quote unquote forecast or have the system help you reorder products. Today we're looking at the simple tool where it's essentially just creating an order for a vendor and receiving that order, and it's just a very simplistic tool. So in order to get to purchase orders and transfers, we'll go to tools, and you can see here's purchase order, transfer, import, and here under inventory links is purchase order and inventory store transfers. Now one thing you'll notice when you watch me interacting with the system is I almost always use this search function. So if I just type in the first few letters of what I'm looking for, it weeds down a potentially big list of things. Like in reports, there's tons of reports. It quickly can weed down that list to what you're specifically looking for. So we're going to take a look at the import utility first. So it gives you kind of a description. It's also kind of red alert, right? If you import data, you can potentially create a lot of data. So make sure you try it out with a small data set first before you go big. So you can download a sample file here, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is just a comma separated file. It actually can accept multiple different types of file formats. And this is just an example. There's actually, typically with our import routines, whether it be purchase orders or products or what have you, a lot of times there's more fields available inside the import than what's showing here. Just the import samples, or the sample files, are just simplistic to give you an idea of what you need in those files. So if you get a file from a vendor, it has to be, the column headers have to be correct, but hypothetically you could import purchase orders from your vendors that maybe they email you, or you can import more than one PO per file, etc. So very handy tool. If you can, strongly recommend that you make use of it. If we go into purchase orders, we're greeted with a list of all of my purchase orders and transfers from the past 30 days. You can use this filter like you can in a report to pick a different set of dates, or to go back further to filter. For example, I could filter based on the number of line items or based on the reference number, right? And we could boil it down to just one that we're specifically looking for. Also notice that I can see the status, opened, an open purchase order versus a received purchase order. Transfers between stores would also show up in this list. We're going to talk a little bit about transfers, but we're going to start with a purchase order. They're very similar. Okay, so I'm creating a new PO. There's a few fields that we're going to want to set. For example, who the supplier is, which location this is going to go to, a purchase order number, which is automatically generated for me by default, but you can replace it with whatever you want as long as it's unique. The entry time, and then also the status, whether or not this purchase order has been received. Now, if I go down into this product field, I can start typing to search for a product. So for example, I'll type in Jack, and there's a product. Okay. Now notice after I've searched for a product, it automatically moves me over into quantity because the system is anticipating that that's the next thing I want to do. So I'm going to type in 12, and I'm going to hit enter. And now it moves me over into the cost. Now, provided that I defined a supplier, it's going to identify the last cost that I paid for this item. And I could just type in a new cost at this point and hit enter again, and I'm on to the next field, or the next row. Now, I searched for a description of a product And the searching is pretty friendly. I mean, you put in part of a name or whatever, it should help you find it. But I can also drive this with a barcode scanner. So I'm going to scan an item. Found it. I'm going to say 6 of this. I'm going to hit enter, enter. I'm going to scan the next one. Got 12 of these. Enter, enter. And away I go. I mean, so without searching, without clicking on anything, I'm just using my keyboard and a barcode scanner to find things. I could also search this field for a supplier's part number, again, provided that I selected a supplier. And as I move along, you can see my extended cost is being updated. So I'm going to save this. And notice too that the product ends up being a hyperlink. But for now, I'm going to close this. Here you can see my PO. So we'll pretend that we've sent this order to a vendor and now we're waiting for it to show up. So it would sit in this queue until you're ready to come back to it. So I'll just open this saved PO back up, and now I can continue to edit it. Notice that the URL it's unique. So you could hypothetically take this link and email it to somebody, one of your coworkers, and they could review the purchase. Okay, now there's a lot of security around purchase orders built into the system in terms of identifying who can do what. So maybe you have somebody that can enter purchase orders in, but they cannot mark them as received, or they cannot change the status. We have some customers, since this is a cloud-based product, we have some customers that have given their vendors access to this functionality and this functionality alone, and they enter their own invoices into the system. And the manager actually marks them as being received. So pretty interesting. Obviously, you need to be careful because you're giving somebody else access to your system, but pretty neat. I mentioned just a moment ago that these are hyperlinks. So any of these products I can click on, it opens up into a new tab, and if I need to, I could change the description of the item or view anything else about it, frankly. Another neat feature is the ability to attach something to the purchase order. So if I click Add Attachment, here I've scanned in a paper invoice, the actual literal paper invoice, and when I save it, this becomes an attachment, and I can open this up later on. So if I need to reconcile the fact that this is $455, excuse me, I could do that. I have the actual invoice right here. Now, nothing has happened yet inside the system in terms of updating my costing or my quantity on hand. That only occurs once I've marked this as being received. So I'm going to mark it as received and then save it again. And notice everything becomes grayed out. It's read only. This has been received. I can't change it. I can't change the quantities anymore. I can't change the cost. I can change the notes. But once you do that, then your inventory levels are updated. And as a matter of fact, if I drill down into a products record, we can go in here and we can actually see the purchase order that was just received and the cost associated with it. Now, again, provided you have the right permissions, one very interesting thing you can do with Cloud Retailer is if you realize that somebody had entered in 12 when it was supposed to be 120, in most systems, once a purchase order has been received, there's no undoing it. It has no way to reconcile any kind of costing changes, etc. With Cloud Retailer, I can mark it as not received. This becomes a document I can once again edit. If I needed to change it and I realize, you know what, I got a deal, and I can mark it as received. And as a matter of fact, I could even say that this was received on the 10th. Okay, the system will automatically go back and rectify the quantities and costing associated with it. This is a huge pain for a lot of our customers running other systems where somebody made a mistake and it wrecked their inventory basically and they don't know how to fix it. It's easy to fix it. You don't want just anybody having this capability because it's dangerous, but it is powerful. Costing done in Cloud Retailer uses what we believe to be the best method, and that's FIFO. So if you buy 10 of them at $5 and then 10 more at $6 later on, the first 10 will be sold at $5, and then the next 10 will be sold at $6. And the system manages all that for you. And if you have to go back and say it was ordered or received a week earlier, it's all handled. Provided you have an email client on your computer like Outlook, you can click email PO or you can print it out. Let's look at transfers here. So if we go back to our purchase order list and I say add transfers, you can see that transfers are I'm going to open up a transfer next. So I'm going to click add transfer between stores. And notice that it is prompting me, it was asking me if I'd like to restore my previously entered data. So being a cloud-based product is very popular. However, if you're in the middle of a 100-line purchase order and you lose your internet connection or who knows what, you're in Mexico, the internet's spotty, that's a pretty painful thing to have happen. So we actually have some functionality built into the app where it will it kind of backs it up to your local machine. So if you come back to it, it asks you if you want to restore it. I'm going to say yes, and now you can see what I was working on previously. Now, a transfer and a purchase order are almost identical. I don't have any costs because actually the system's smart enough to move products using that FIFO costing so that costs are transferred from one store to another as they associate to a product. I've got the same functionality here where I can type and search, or I can use a barcode scanner. The one major difference is that I have a to and a from location, but otherwise this works the same. Once I mark a transfer as received, it will move the inventory out of, in this case, Minneapolis, to the Boise location. Done deal. If you know how to use a purchase order, you know how to use a transfer. So pretty straightforward. I hope this video is helpful.